On this week's episode of Authenticity, Dr. Nate Freeman talks about the days of small beginnings. Check this out.
Hi, I'm Nate Freeman, and on today's show, I want to talk to you about instant potatoes. Yes, that might seem like an odd topic for a show called Authenticity, but instant potatoes, that's the kind that come in the box and it comes in a little packet, and you kind of throw that packet in some water and you mix it up and maybe do your best to dress it up with some salt and some butter. But at the end of the day, instant potatoes can't compare to the real potatoes that you boil and peel and make into mashed potatoes and add butter and maybe chicken gravy or beef gravy to it, and maybe even throw in a sirloin steak. I'm not here to talk about what you had for dinner, but I am talking about the days of small beginnings. I've had my share of TV dinners and ramen noodles and all those things. In fact, my kids one time where we were at home and and they were like, "Dad, there's no meat." And I said, "What do you mean there's no meat?" And I looked in the cupboard and they said, "Well, the meat's not in the cupboard." I said, "What do you mean?" I said, "We've got beef, chicken, and shrimp flavored ramen noodles," and that was the standing joke, but it's not where you start, but it's where you end up. And what I want to remind you though, it's the lessons that you learn. In this day and age of what seems like instant success, you have individuals like LeBron James go from high school to sign a $100 million contract to play a game called basketball, or you have teenagers right now grossing $1 million a year online, doing online businesses. We see all these things around us where everything seems to be happening instantly and fast. And I don't want to distract from what God can do in a moment. Don't get me wrong. A moment of favor is better than a lifetime of labor in the Lord. But what I want to talk to you about is the principle of not despising your day of small beginnings. You can't despise that time, the lessons that were learned. For me personally, my first job in ministry was not preaching. It was not anything to do with anything really that spiritual. My first job when I was hired, I was in Bible college, and a friend of mine was working he had an important position at the church. And he said, "Why don't you apply at the church?" And I did. And my first job at the church was to clean bathrooms. That's right. I went to a church that sat 5,200 people, and I got hired right before they had a conference that brought in 30,000 people. Now, I don't know if you've, maybe cleaning my bathroom at home was a little bit different than cleaning a bathroom after 30,000 people have gone through the bathrooms. And I want to say it was a humbling experience. It was one I'll never forget. But here's the one thing I know. I was so excited and I was so honored that I got to work for God and I got to get a paycheck to serve the Lord. And I really do mean that. And so that job led to other things in my life that God began to do, because here's the thing, I was faithful with that job. I was faithful with the things that the Lord was giving me. And a lot of times I think we complain about the thing that God at one time we thought was a blessing, and we begin to complain about it. But what we really need to do is look and see, are we doing everything in our power to make our situation better? Being faithful in the little things, goes a long way. There's lessons that are learned. I learned lessons that set the foundation that I can build upon to have successes in my life. I went from Bible college to speak in 200 nights out of a year, and seeing people get instantaneously saved, and blind eyes open, deaf ears open, people walking out of wheelchairs. Things were happening, and then all of a sudden I was stricken with blindness. And during that time of darkness in my life, I really wanted to give up. I really wanted to not see anybody, and I just had this pity party for myself. But as I sat in my room, and the pity party was over, and a good pastor friend of mine, Jack Ernest, came over and said, "Hey, it's time for you to stop feeling sorry for yourself." And that's what I did. I stopped feeling sorry for myself, and I started seeking the Lord. And the Lord showed up. And he showed me that I was going to see. And I was, at the time, I decided, well, you know what? I have to do something with my life. So I decided to go to a university and take business classes. And I started out taking classes completely blind. I couldn't see. In fact, I would count the steps to know where my classrooms were. And I would hear, students being students and people being people, snickers and laughs, and as I tripped and stumbled to the room and to my chair. I even had professors wave their hands in front of my face to see if I was pretending to be blind. But I remember this. I was taking a Christian moral principles class, and I would take that class audibly. I would have to sit down with the professor, a little intimidating, after he had lectured in there all week long, or for that time until the exam, and I would have to regurgitate back to him the answers that he was looking for. Well, in the middle of that time of studying, I was taking notes. See, I was faithful in the task. I was faithful to go into class. I was faithful to listen to the lecture. Now, I did have sight before that time, so I knew how to write. And people would always ask me, "Why are you taking notes if you can't read?" And I said, "I don't know. I just am being faithful. This is what I would do if I could see, and I believe I can see." So I would take notes. And one day I looked down and I began to see a letter. Then I began to see words. And then I began to read I was able to read my whole notes. And so I go back to this professor, and I'm sitting in his office, and he would do his whole thing with waving his fingers in my face and asking me all these questions. And he began to give me the test orally. And I said, "Excuse me, Professor Harold, today, you know what I like to do? I like to take that test written." He looked at me with a surprise on his face, and he thought I was joking. I said, "No, I believe I could take this test written." He gave me the test. I read the questions, wrote out the answers, and aced that test. I graduated cum laude by the power and to the glory of God. And what I'm trying to say is, I was faithful in the small things. And when we're faithful with the little, he'll give you more. Stay faithful to God in the middle of your circumstance, in the middle of the things. Don't look to the left or the right. Don't look at other people's successes and wonder why you're not there yet. God has a timing for you. He has a plan for you, and your job is not to compare yourself to anyone else than to who God called you to be. And if you're doing that, you're going to get God's results, and you're going to get God's plan for your life. And remember, God's plan is not to harm you or to hurt you, but to bless you and prosper you. He does have a plan for you. He does have a way for you. There is peace. You can have peace. You can have joy that's unspeakable, and he can take you to where he's told you that he's going to take you. God bless you. I'm Nate Freeman.
Hey guys, it's Trey, the producer of the show. Authenticity is a weekly show produced by the team at Godspeak TV, which is the media outreach for the World Impact Network. We have projects in the United States and all over the world, and if you'd like to see more of what we do, download our latest app called World Impact Network, available on all devices.